going bakers, it's Jack here, bakerwithjack.co.uk, bringing you your weekly bread making tip every single Thursday. And this week we finally begin to talk about wholemeal flour. It's only been 4 years. Roll that theme tune. Hello to you and welcome back to the Bake with Jack YouTube channel, where I share a little bit of my bread making expertise with you every single Thursday to help you make amazing bread at home. If you've just arrived here and this sort of thing is your cup of tea, consider clicking subscribe before you go. Okay, you've been asking me about this for ages, and this week we finally talk about what wholemeal flour actually is, and then in next week's video we're going to talk about what to do with it. My guidelines for substituting white flour for wholemeal flour, and how you might want to adapt the method and or ingredients to help accommodate for that change. For the purposes of this video, I'm going to be calling whole wheat flour or whole grain flour or wholemeal flour brown flour, because as much as there are actual infinite possibilities of wheat flour, in my mind, the way I see things, there's only really two kinds: white and brown. Now, brown flour is called different things all over the globe, and I haven't been to all different places all over the globe. So to clarify for this video, I'm talking about brown wheat flour. Flour that is brown and has been made out of wheat. Of course, you can get other flours in white and brown, like spout flour or rye flour, for example. And a lot of the principles we talk about today in terms of how they are made and produced will be shared, but they will differ in the way that we use them because they each have different properties. I feel like with a good understanding of what brown flour actually is, you'd be well equipped and more open to trying it out and using it in your recipe. So let's get serious and get out that chalkboard that I know you've all been missing for so long. Yeah! We're back, baby. Oh, yes. Okay, before we look at this, let's look at some wheat. Wheat looks like this. Now here is a diagram of a piece of wheat, a grain of wheat, if you like. Some people call it a wheat berry, some people call it a wheat seed, call it whatever you like. Here's a diagram of a cross section. The wheat grain is made out of different parts. We got this middle bit that I did in white and the outside bit that I did in pink. This middle bit is actually two pieces. It's called the endosperm and the germ, but that doesn't really matter too much today. We can bundle those bits together because that is effectively the white bit. The outside part is the bran, which is brown. Yeah? Think about it like a clove of garlic, right? The bran, the outside part, is that papery skin. The white part is the clove that you use to cook and eat. And if we're getting technical about it, that germ bit would be that little bit in the middle that goes green sometimes and shoots out the top. Now, to help you understand in the way that I understand all this complicated science, the wheat flour is the wheat grains smashed up into powder. Smash the whole wheat grain into powder and you get brown flour, which is this: whole wheat flour, whole grain, etc. You see how the names relate now? Because it's the whole grain of wheat. Got that? That's this. Now, if you put that brown flour through a sieve and you sift out all of that brown bran, you are now left with white flour. Sometimes the germ is sifted out as well, and sometimes it isn't, and that's why we're not really talking about it today. We're just talking about the white bit and the brown bit because it's not really relevant and it helps us keep things simple. In a slightly rudimentary way of replicating what is happening in a mill, I'm going to take this brown flour and pop it through my sieve like this. Now, it won't be exactly the same because my sieve is probably not as fine as what is used, or as a different way of doing it in a mill or something like this. But you'll understand, hopefully you'll see the point I'm trying to make, which is the brown bran will be sifted out to leave the white flour behind. Likely what's going to happen here in my white flour is going to be speckled with little tiny bits of brown that have gone through the mesh of the sieve, but you should get the idea of what I'm talking about. Here we go, look. There effectively would be the white flour left, and here, let me get that right, hold on, is the brown bran, right? You see what I mean? That's the bran by itself. Here's the white flour. There's still speckles of bran in there because of my sieve, but you get the idea that that would be bran and white flour left over. That brown bran by itself, what was sifted out of the flour to make the white flour, is often used to make breakfast cereal like bran flakes, for example, and all bran. Now all this is very easy, right? But it's not as straightforward as that, because different milling methods make brown flour in all different ways, and all different brands in all different countries name their flours all different names, which is all very confusing. If your brown flour is stone ground, that means that the whole wheat grain has been smashed between two stones, popped into a bag for you to use to make bread at home, and that's it. If the flour is roller milled, that means the whole wheat grain has been smashed into a powder. Relevant parts of it have been sifted off and divided up in between relevant pots, and then it's been reassembled to make the brown flour to sell to you. It's been specifically blended with specific characteristics to create a specific product. It's no longer as simple as a whole grain smashed, and that's why there's no 100% distinction link between the names wholemeal, whole grain, whole wheat, and what's going on in the actual bag, because they are a product and it's just what the manufacturers decide to call their blend. Does that make sense? Even further than that, there are different extraction rates which relate to just exactly how much of that brown stuff is sifted out in the first place to make your white flour, and at risk of getting too complex, you don't need to worry about all that stuff unless you want to, which I don't, and I make bread without knowing, and that's okay. So that's what it is, but what do I do with it, I hear you ask? The white bit and the brown bit have different qualities, and flours with a different ratio of each require different hydration rates in order to make a dough that you are familiar with and that you are comfortable with. But I don't know how much white and how much brown is in the flour in your cupboard at home all over the world. I could Google every single brand across the country and read the back of the packet and make my best guess as to what you probably need to do to make it work for you, but that is a hell of a lot of effort to make me appear like I know what I'm talking about, when actually I couldn't possibly. What I am going to do in next week's video, and what I believe is more useful to you in the long term, is talk about what I do know about, which is the principle of your brown flour. The properties of brown flour versus white flour, to give you the tools you need to try, the knowledge you need to comfortably experiment, to practice, and to make something amazing. We'll talk about substituting white for brown and how you might want to adjust the method and or recipe to accommodate the change. And here we are at the end of this week's video bread tip. I hope you've learned something from this single video alone. I decided to split it into two, because if I was watching it, it'd be a lot of information for my brain to be able to cope with, and perhaps that's the same with you, I don't know. Thank you so much for watching this week's video bread making tip. I hope you've learned something. If you don't want to miss out on next week and you haven't clicked subscribe already, consider clicking subscribe, and I'll see you back here, same time, same place, every single Thursday. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for stopping by for your weekly bread making tip, and don't forget, if you don't want to miss any of my content, you can sign up for the free Home Bakers Bulletin and get all my content in your inbox every single Thursday morning. The link is underneath. See you next week.